They called her just a housewife. In the glittering world of her husband, Marcus Pierce, Elara was the invisible woman, the one who organized charity bake sales while he closed million-dollar deals. She was the simple, plain wife he tucked away the embarrassing secret to his sophisticated life. But at the Starlight Ball, the most exclusive event of the year, everyone was about to learn the truth. The woman they dismissed was richer than all of them combined. The man she loved was about to lose everything. This is the story of how Elara Pierce burned their world to the ground. The scent of old money and fresh-cut lilies always made Elara Pierce feel slightly nauseous. Her home, a sprawling, sterile white mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, was a testament to her husband's ambition, not her own. Every gleaming surface, every piece of cold modern art had been chosen by Marcus. Elara's only domain was the kitchen, which she genuinely loved, and her small, sun-filled study where she organized fundraisers for the local women's shelter. "Elara, are you even listening?" Marcus barked, not looking up from his phone. He was knotting a silk Tom Ford tie, his reflection staring back at him from the black marble of the fireplace. Elara flinched, pulling her focus from a spreadsheet detailing silent auction bids. "Sorry, Marcus. The shelter gala is next week. I was just finalizing the numbers." Marcus sighed, a sound of profound theatrical exasperation. "The shelter gala. Right. Listen, Elara, I need you to be serious for one night. The Starlight Ball is in 2 weeks. It's not your little bake sale. This is the event." "I know, Marcus. The one hosted by the Ashfords," she said quietly. "Not just hosted by them. Julian Ashford himself is rumored to be making an appearance. Do you understand what that means?" He finally turned to her, his eyes cold. At 42, Marcus Pierce was a man sculpted by ambition. He was a senior vice president at Crestview Investments, a firm that was, to put it mildly, drowning. "It's important for your deal," Elara recited. "It's not a deal, Elara. It's the deal. Ashford Global is considering an acquisition of Crestview. Without it—" He didn't need to finish. Without it, the house of cards, this house, the cars, his reputation would collapse. "I need you to look presentable, not like a librarian. I need you to look like you belong." "I don't belong," she thought. She hadn't belonged in this world for 10 years. She had been Elara Pierce for a decade. But before that, she had been someone else entirely. A ghost. I'll find something to wear," she murmured. "Good." He tapped his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "I've got to go. A dinner meeting with Serafina and the junior partners. We're finalizing the pitch for the Ashford board." Elara's stomach tightened at the name. Serafina Vance. The new, brilliant, and stunningly beautiful junior executive in Marcus's division. The woman whose perfume, a heavy, expensive musk, had clung to his suit jackets for the past 6 months. "Oh. Well, have a good time." Elara said the words, tasting like ash. "Don't wait up." He was already out the door, the click of the lock echoing in the cavernous hallway. Elara was left alone with the lilies and the spreadsheets. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass of the entryway. She saw a woman of 32, with kind eyes, simple brown hair, pulled back in a clip, and a plain cardigan. She saw just a housewife. But as she stared, another face stared back. A memory of a girl with fire in her eyes, standing on the deck of a yacht off the coast of Monaco. A girl who had been told she would one day rule the world. She shook the memory away. That girl was gone. That girl had run away to be normal, to be loved for herself. She had met Marcus, a charming, driven associate at a small firm. She had fallen in love with his energy, his promises of a simple, successful life. She had chosen this. She went back to her spreadsheets. The women's shelter needed 50,000 for a new wing. She would get it for them. This at least was real. This was her work. Later that night, long after midnight, Marcus's phone, synced to the tablet in the kitchen, buzzed with a new message. Elara, cleaning a wine glass, glanced over. Serafina. He's bought it. The pitch is solid. He has no idea the Ashfords are planning to liquidate Crestview, not acquire it. He's just desperate enough to sign anything. And his pathetic little wife. He actually called her domestic. God, you're a good actor, Marcus. Elara dropped the glass. It didn't just break. It shattered, exploding across the quartz countertop. It wasn't the affair. She had suspected that. For months. It was the lie. It was the contempt. Pathetic little wife. Domestic. And liquidate. Marcus wasn't trying to save his company. He was trying to secure a golden parachute for himself, selling his partners and his wife down the river for a payout from the Ashford deal. She stared at the shattered glass, and for the first time in 10 years, the face of the girl on the yacht didn't fade away. It smiled, a cold, sharp, dangerous smile. The following week was a blur of forced smiles. Elara played the part of the supportive, oblivious wife. She cleaned the shattered glass, bandaged the small cut on her hand, and said nothing. She watched Marcus practice his pitch, a performance of desperation masquerading as confidence. He was a man acting out the final scene of his own tragedy, and he didn't even know it. The official invitation for the Starlight Ball arrived. It was not paper. It was a half-inch thick slab of engraved acrylic, delivered by a courier. The Ashford family crest, a golden griffin clutching a key, was embossed at the top. "Look at this, Elara," Marcus said, holding it up to the light. "This is it, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the entire Egyptian wing. They say the Ashfords donate 8 figures just to close the museum for the night." "It's impressive," Elara said, her voice carefully neutral. She knew the crest. As a child, she'd had a signet ring with the same griffin. She'd thrown it into the Seine the day she ran away. "Impressive isn't the word," Marcus scoffed. "It's power, and I need you to look the part. I mean it, Elara." He pulled a black credit card from his wallet. Not his usual one, but a sleek, heavy card with no name, only a number. "This is the corporate emergency card. Go to Bergdorf's. Go to Saks. I don't care. Buy a dress. Buy jewelry. Just, for God's sake, get your hair done. Don't look like you're going to a PTA meeting." The insult, which would have stung her a week ago, now felt clinical. She took the card. "All right, Marcus. I'll take care of it." "Good. Serafina is helping me with the final presentation. She actually knows some of the junior board members. She knows how this world works. She knows how you work," Elara thought. The next day, Elara went into Manhattan. But she didn't go to Bergdorf's. She walked down Fifth Avenue, feeling the city's energy, a current she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a decade. She passed the grand fortress-like building that was the U.S. headquarters of Ashford Global. A massive, polished brass A hung over the granite archway. She paused, looking at her faint reflection in the brass. She didn't go inside. Not yet. Instead, she went to a small, unassuming coffee shop in the West Village, one she used to frequent. She ordered a black coffee and sat. She was waiting. Meanwhile, in a glass-walled conference room in Midtown, Serafina. Vance was lounging on Marcus's desk, one Louboutin heel swinging lazily. She actually took the credit card. Serafina laughed, a sound like ice cubes in a glass. God, she's so predictable. What do you think she'll buy? Something beige, I bet. Something with a sensible neckline. It doesn't matter, Marcus said, massaging his temples, as long as she doesn't embarrass me in front of the Ashfords. Oh, sweetie, she's going to embarrass you. Serafina purred, sliding off the desk and walking behind him, her hands kneading his shoulders. But that's the point, isn't it? When you finally leave her after your big payday, everyone will understand. They'll say, well, look at her. Can you blame him? The deal first, Sarah. Then we can talk about that. The deal, Serafina agreed. I've double-checked the liquidation clauses. The moment Julian Ashford's representative signs the holding company, transfers the funds to your private account in Zurich. Crestview's other partners will be locked in a bankruptcy proceeding for years. But you'll be on a beach with me. And what about old man Ashford? You're sure he won't be there? You're sure it's just his lawyers? Julian Ashford hasn't been seen in public in 5 years, Marcus. He's a recluse, a ghost. He's probably hooked up to a machine somewhere. His lackeys run everything. And those lackeys, my darling, are very, very predictable. Marcus leaned back, closing his eyes as Serafina's fingers brushed his neck. Good, because in 1 week I'll be free. Across town, Elara's phone vibrated. A text message with a single word, here. Elara stood up, leaving her coffee untouched. She walked out of the shop and into a black Rolls-Royce that had pulled silently to the curb. The door was opened by a man in a dark suit. It's good to see you, Miss Elara, the man said, his voice thick with a quiet, respectful relief. It's good to see you too, Benjamin, she said. The man was Benjamin Reed, chief counsel for the Ashford family, and the one person on earth who knew her as anything other than Mrs. Pierce. The interior of the Rolls-Royce was silent, the chaos of New York City reduced to a muted film outside the tinted windows. It smelled of old leather and his grandfather's faint, familiar scent of cedar. How is he? Elara asked, her voice tight. It was the first question she had asked in 10 years. Benjamin Reed, a man whose face was a road map of loyalty and concern, turned to her. He is fading, Miss Elara. The doctors say it is a matter of months, perhaps only weeks. He has one last wish. To see me, Elara whispered, looking down at her hands. Hands that baked bread and weeded gardens, not hands that signed billion-dollar contracts. To make you safe, Benjamin corrected gently. To restore what is yours. He has never stopped searching for you, not for one day. When you vanished from Paris, he nearly tore the world apart. I know, she said, guilt and old anger mixing into a bitter cocktail. I couldn't breathe, Ben. The expectations, the Ashford name. It was a golden cage. The arranged marriage he was planning. I would have rather died. He knows that now, Ben said. He's an old man, Elara. He's not the tyrant you fled. He's just a grandfather who wants to know his only heir is safe before he goes. Elara processed this. How did you find me? We've had leads for years. We knew you were in the US, but you were clever. New name, no credit cash jobs for the first few years. And then you married Marcus Pierce. Ben's face darkened. We've been monitoring him for 6 months, ever since his firm Crestview opened negotiations for the Ashford Global acquisition. Elara's blood ran cold. You knew he was trying to make this deal. Yes, we were perplexed. He was negotiating against your interests, using his marriage to you, which he clearly doesn't understand, as a minor social leverage point. But then 6 weeks ago, the nature of the deal changed. He began colluding with Miss Serafina Vance. He's not being acquired, is he? Elara asked, her voice flat. No, Miss Elara. Ben said, his tone grave. He is being played. Ms. Vance is colluding with a rival firm, Vanguard Capital. They convinced her that Ashford Global intended to liquidate Crestview. They've fed her false information. She in turn believes she is helping Marcus steal a golden parachute. So what's the real deal? There isn't one. Ashford Global was never going to acquire Crestview. The firm is leveraged to the point of absurdity. Your grandfather merely allowed the negotiations to continue, to keep an eye on Mr. Pierce, to see what kind of man his granddaughter had married. Elara leaned her head against the cool glass. And now he knows? He does, Ben said, and he is displeased. The car wasn't heading back to Greenwich. It was heading toward a private airfield in Teterboro, New Jersey. Where are we going? To see your grandfather. He is at the estate in the Adirondacks. He wants to see you before the ball. Ben paused. Elara, the Starlight Ball is not just a party this year. It is your introduction. Your grandfather plans to formally announce his retirement and name you as his successor, as the matriarch and CEO of Ashford Global. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. CEO. Matriarch. These were the words she had fled. I can't, Ben. I'm a housewife. I organize bake sales. I haven't looked at a balance sheet in a decade. Benjamin Reed smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen. Miss Elara, you were educated at MIT and INSEAD. You speak 4 languages. You interned at the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. You single-handedly restructured your boarding school's endowment fund at the age of 17. The only reason you are a housewife is because you are brilliant enough to act like one. Your grandfather knows this. I know this. The only person you've managed to fool, it seems, is your husband. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a simple, elegant file. This is the dossier on Marcus Pierce, and Ms. Vance, and Vanguard Capital. Everything. Your grandfather believed. You might want to read it, to understand the game before you play your hand. Elara opened the file. The first page was a wire transfer confirmation, from Marcus's account to a private account in Serafina's name. The second was a transcript of the phone call from last night. She read. And as she read, the housewife, Elara Pierce, the woman who worried about PTA meetings and beige dresses, quietly and completely evaporated. The woman who was left, she was an Ashford, and she was furious. The Ashford estate in the Adirondacks was not a house. It was a territory. A sprawling Gilded Age great camp, built of massive timbers and local stone. It sat on its own private lake, surrounded by tens of thousands of acres of pristine forest. The camp was named Griffin's Ledge. It was where Elara had spent her summers as a child, before her parents' death in a plane crash had made her the sole heir. The helicopter landed on a wide granite pad. Benjamin Reed escorted her to the main lodge. Julian Ashford was waiting for her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket in a large wheelchair, an oxygen tube clipped discreetly to his nose. He was thinner than she remembered his legendary steel-grey eyes, now clouded with age and illness. But when he saw her, they cleared. Elara. He breathed, his voice a dry rustle. He held out a trembling hand. Elara rushed to him, dropping to her knees and taking his frail hand in hers. The tears she had held back for a week, for a decade, finally came. "Grandfather, I'm so sorry." "Hush, child," he whispered, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "It is I who am sorry. I drove you away. I saw you as a successor, not as a granddaughter. I tried to forge you into a weapon. I forgot to just love you. Can you forgive an old fool? There's nothing to forgive." She wept. "I was just so lost." "You were not lost," he said, his voice gaining a flicker of its old strength. "You were in hiding. Now, it is time to come home." They sat for hours. She told him about her small life, about the joy she found in the shelter, in gardening, in living without a security detail. He in turn told her about the company, how it had grown, but how it lacked heart. "It is a vast, powerful machine, Elara," he said, looking out at the lake. "But it has no soul. It needs you. The Ashford Foundation. Your mother started it. It's been stagnant. You with your shelter. You understand things I never did." Then they talked about Marcus. "He's a fool," Julian stated, his voice flat. "A greedy, short-sighted, arrogant fool. And he has my granddaughter's name in his mouth. He doesn't know grandfather. He thinks I'm nobody. He calls me just a housewife." Julian Ashford's eyes hardened. "That is a mistake he will only make once. Benjamin has explained the situation. The ball. The announcement. Are you ready for this, Elara? Once you step into that light, you can never go back to the shadows." Elara thought of the text message from Serafina. She thought of Marcus's contempt. She thought of the lie. "He's not just a fool, grandfather," Elara said, her voice turning cold. "He's a thief. He's colluding with Serafina Vance to defraud his own company and escape with a payout. And she is colluding with Vanguard Capital to sabotage the Ashford name." Julian nodded slowly. "A tangled web." "I'm not just going to announce my succession," Elara said, standing up. "I'm going to clean house. My house, my company's house, and my husband's." A slow, wolfish grin spread across Julian Ashford's face. "There you are," he whispered. "There's the Ashford blood." "Ben," Elara called, turning to the lawyer who stood discreetly by the door. "I need you to do several things. First, I want you to freeze the Zurich account Marcus Pierce opened. Use our Swiss banking connections. I want it frozen 1 hour before the Starlight Ball begins." Ben nodded, already taking notes. "Second, I want you to call the SEC and prepare a whistleblower report on Vanguard Capital for stock manipulation using Ms. Vance as an unregistered agent. Time the submission for 900 p.m., the night of the ball. Consider it done. Third, I need a dress." Ben looked up confused. "A dress, Miss Elara?" "Marcus gave me his corporate card to buy a dress at Bergdorf's," she said, a wicked glint in her eye. "I want to use it. I want to buy the most obscenely expensive, garish, awful dress they have. Something beige and sensible." Ben looked utterly bewildered, but Julian Ashford burst into a rare, rumbling laugh. "And," Elara continued, "I want my dress, the one Mother commissioned for my 21st birthday, the Dior gown. Is it still in the vault?" "Of course, miss," Ben said. "Have it flown to New York, and call my mother's team, the stylist, the hair, the makeup, and Harry Winston. Tell them the Griffin is returning." Elara spent 2 more days with her grandfather, poring over the company's financials, absorbing the last 10 years of business. It was like a dormant language she suddenly remembered how to speak. She wasn't just a housewife. She was a genius. And she had been bored for a very, very long time. When she returned to the sterile Greenwich house, Marcus was there fuming. "Where the hell have you been?" he yelled. "I've been calling you for 2 days." Elara walked past him, carrying a large, obnoxious Bergdorf Goodman bag. "I was at a spa," she said calmly. "You told me to get presentable. I got presentable. A 2-day spa trip. Without telling me the ball is tomorrow night. Elara, I'm aware." She pulled the dress from the bag and held it up. It was a monstrosity. A high-necked, long-sleeved, shapeless sack of a dress in the most depressing shade of beige. Marcus stared at it in horror. "What is that?" "It's Chanel," she lied. "The saleswoman said it was very sophisticated. It cost $20,000. Marcus's eye twitched, but he'd seen the charge on his corporate card. 20,000. For that, it's fine. Whatever. Just do something with your hair. Please, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm staying in the city tonight with Serafina to do final prep." "Of course, dear," Elara said, her smile perfectly sweet. "You go focus on your deal. I'll just see you at the museum." He slammed the door. Elara looked at the beige dress, then tossed it into the fireplace. "It's not even Chanel," she muttered. She hadn't even gone to the store. She'd had Ben's assistant buy it. The real dress was already hanging in her closet. The day of the Starlight Ball was electric. New York City hummed with the anticipation of it. The New York Times and Vogue had both run features on the event, calling it the coronation of the year, though no one understood why. The rumor was that Ashford Global was announcing a new massive philanthropic initiative. In a suite at the Pierre Hotel, Marcus Pierce was adjusting his tuxedo. Serafina Vance, in a crimson backless gown, was sipping champagne. "Tonight's the night," she toasted, clinking his glass. "By midnight you'll be a very rich man, and I'll be the woman who made it happen." "To us," Marcus said, his nerves fraying. "You're sure the transfer will go through? The moment the Ashford representative signs the acquisition papers, the liquidation clause is triggered. The funds route through 3 shell corporations and land in Zurich. By the time the SEC even smells a rat, we'll be in Turks and Caicos." "What about Elara?" Marcus asked, a flicker of something. Not guilt, but annoyance. "What about her?" Serafina scoffed. "She'll be humiliated, broke and divorced. She'll go back to whatever suburban hole she crawled out of. She'll be fine. She's a housewife, Marcus. They're resilient." Marcus nodded, straightening his bow tie. "You're right. She'll be fine." He looked at his watch, 6:00 p.m. "The car is here. Let's go make our entrance." Across town, in a different kind of silence, Elara was undergoing her own transformation. The house in Greenwich was empty, save for a team of people who moved with quiet, practiced efficiency. This was the Ashford team, the people who had served her mother. Her hair, once a simple brown, was now a rich, deep chestnut, styled in elegant, powerful waves that fell over one shoulder. Her makeup was flawless, not heavy, but definitive. Her eyes, once soft and kind, were now sharp and assessing, lined in a subtle black. She was not the woman who had left this house. Then she put on the dress. It was not a dress. It was armor. A custom Christian Dior gown commissioned a decade ago and held in storage, it was timeless. It was made of a deep sapphire blue velvet that seemed to drink the light. It was cut with an aristocratic severity, long sleeves, a high collar. but it was fitted perfectly to her body, hinting at a strength Marcus had never bothered to see. And then the jewelry. From a Harry Winston velvet case, Benjamin Reed lifted the Ashford necklace, a staggering river-like cascade of blue and white diamonds, culminating in the griffin's heart, a flawless 100-carat blue diamond. "Your mother wore this," Ben said quietly. Elara nodded, her throat tight. She fastened the matching diamond earrings. She was no longer Elara Pierce. She was Elara Ashford. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the private security team Ben had assigned to her. "Security Mr. Pierce and Miss Vance have arrived at the Met. They are on the main floor." Elara stood. "It's time." "One more thing, miss," Ben said. He held out a small, velvet-lined box. Inside was the signet ring she had thrown into the Seine. The gold griffin. "How? Your grandfather had divers search for it for 6 months. He always knew you'd come back." Elara slid the ring onto her right pinky finger. It was a perfect fit. "Let's go," she said. Back at the museum, Marcus and Serafina were working the room. The Egyptian wing of the Met was breathtaking, the Temple of Dendur, serving as a backdrop. Waiters offered champagne and caviar. "There," Marcus whispered, nodding toward a group of men in severe suits. "That's the Ashford board. That's it, Sarah. That's our target." "Easy, darling," Serafina said, smoothing his lapel. "Let them come to us. We're the hot new commodity." As they mingled, a few of Marcus's colleagues from Crestview approached, their faces pale with worry. "Marcus," one of them, a man named David, said nervously, "my accounts are frozen. All of them. My corporate and my personal. Is something wrong with the firm?" Marcus felt a jolt of panic. "What, no? It's probably just a security glitch. The network gets jumpy before a big merger. But relax, David." Serafina cut in, her smile dazzlingly fake. "Have some champagne. Tonight is a celebration." Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He looked at it. A fraud alert from his bank in Zurich. "Account frozen. Pending international inquiry." "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." "Marcus, what is it?" Serafina said, her smile faltering. "The account. It's frozen. They froze the account." "What?" Serafina's face went white. "They can't." How did they know? I don't know." "You," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "You did something stupid. You told someone. Did you tell your wife?" "What, no?" "She's too stupid to even understand. A Zurich account. Then who?" As panic began to grip them, a sudden, profound hush fell over the 3,000-strong crowd. The music stopped. The ambient chatter died. All eyes turned to the grand staircase. The silence in the great hall was absolute. It wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Marcus and Serafina, frozen in their private spiral of panic, turned with the rest of the crowd to see what had caused the interruption. On the landing of the grand staircase stood Julian Ashford. This alone was enough to cause a sensation. The man was a myth, a ghost. He hadn't been seen in public since the 2008 financial crisis. He was standing, albeit leaning heavily on a cane, not in the wheelchair they'd all assumed he was confined to. He looked frail, but his eyes, magnified by his glasses, swept the room with an ancient, undeniable authority. Beside him stood Benjamin Reed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian's voice boomed surprisingly strong, amplified by the museum's acoustics. "Thank you for joining me." Cameras flashed. The press, held back at the edges of the room, went into a frenzy. "He's here." Marcus whispered, his panic momentarily forgotten, replaced by a greedy awe. "He's actually here. This is bigger than we thought." "Shut up, Marcus." Serafina snapped her eyes, darting around, looking for an exit. "Something is wrong." "For 50 years, Julian continued, I have been the steward of Ashford Global. I built it from my father's small shipping company into the entity it is today. But time as it must has come for me." A collective gasp. "Tonight I am here to do two things. First, to announce my immediate retirement as chairman and CEO." The room exploded in murmurs. This was the biggest news in the financial world in a decade. Who would take over the board was competent, but there was no clear successor. And second, Julian raised his hand, silencing the crowd once more. "I am here to introduce the new head of the Ashford family, the new matriarch of our legacy, and the new chairwoman and CEO of Ashford Global." Marcus looked at Serafina giddy. "This is it. They're announcing the new internal structure. This is when they'll sign the acquisition." "My successor," Julian said, his voice softening, "is the one person who has always held the key to its future. The one person I trust to lead it with not only a brilliant mind, but with the heart it has so desperately lacked." He turned, holding his hand out toward the top of the stairs, which had been in shadow. "Please, welcome my granddaughter." A figure stepped from the darkness. It was not a junior executive. It was not a faceless board member. It was Alara. She descended the stairs not as a housewife, but as a queen. The sapphire dress seemed to pull all the light in the room onto her. The griffin's heart diamond at her throat flashed with a cold blue fire. Her gaze was not nervous or shy. It was level assessing and utterly terrifyingly cold. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at only one person: Marcus. The sound Marcus Pierce made was not a word. It was a strangled biological noise, the sound of a man's entire reality collapsing in on him. He dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the marble floor, but no one heard it over the thunder of 1,000 camera flashes. Serafina Vance was frozen. Her perfectly painted red lips were parted in a silent O of horror. Her mind, usually so quick, so calculating, simply could not process what she was seeing. The mousy beige woman she had mocked was wearing the Ashford diamonds. That's not," Serafina stammered. "That's impossible." Alara reached the bottom of the stairs. She walked past the stunned board members, past the billionaires and politicians, and stood beside her grandfather. She kissed his cheek, then turned to the microphone Benjamin Reed held for her. She looked out at the sea of stunned faces, and then her eyes landed on Marcus and Serafina. She gave them a small, tight smile. It did not reach her eyes. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was clear, crisp, and carried the effortless authority of someone who has never had to raise it to be heard. It was not the voice of the woman who organized bake sales. "My name," she said, her gaze locking with Marcus's, "is Alara Ashford. For 10 years, many of you knew me, if you knew me at all, as Alara Pierce, just a housewife." She let the words hang in the air, a public accusation. The crowd shifted, sensing the blood in the water. "I chose that life," Alara continued, "to see if I could live and be loved for who I was, not for what I was worth. I wanted a normal life. I wanted to build something real." She paused. It was an informative experiment. Elara. Marcus took a step forward, his hand outstretched, a ghastly, pleading smile on his face. Darling, what is this? This is a joke, right? A surprise. Elara looked at him. The entire room watched as the new CEO of Ashford Global regarded the man. It was the look a biologist might give a specimen under a microscope. A surprise. Yes, I suppose it is, Marcus. She turned her gaze to Serafina. And for you too, Miss Vance. Serafina's phone buzzed. And again. And again. She looked down. News alerts. SEC launches formal investigation into Vanguard Capital, CITES stock manipulation. Swiss authorities freeze Zurich accounts linked to Crestview Investments. Serafina looked up, her face ashen, true animalistic fear in her eyes. As my first act as CEO, Elara said into the microphone, her voice resonating with cold power. Ashford Global is formally cancelling all negotiations with Crestview Investments, effective immediately. No, Marcus shouted, lunging forward. No, you can't. We have a deal, Elara, please. We can talk about this. Two Ashford security guards who had materialized silently from the crowd grabbed Marcus by the arms. Furthermore, Elara said, her voice cutting through his protests, Ashford Global is filing a civil suit against Mr. Marcus Pierce and Ms. Serafina Vance for conspiracy to defraud. And on a personal note, she looked directly at Marcus as he struggled against the guards. Mr. Pierce, you referred to me as your pathetic little wife. You conspired to sell my company's assets you didn't even know were mine, to fund a new life with your mistress. You told me to buy a dress and look the part. Well, here I am. She gestured to her gown. This is a Dior. The necklace is Harry Winston. The company is mine. She turned to the guards. He is no longer my husband. He is no longer an employee of any Ashford interest. He is in fact a criminal. Please escort him from my property. Elara. No, you can't do this to me. Marcus roared, his civilized mask completely gone, revealing the desperate, terrified creature beneath. I love you, Elara. The guards dragged him out of the Temple of Dendur, his screams echoing off the ancient stone. The room was silent. Elara then turned her cool gaze to Serafina, who was shaking, cornered. Miss Vance, Elara said, your ambition is noted. You're fired. And I'd advise your consulting firm to review its ethics clause. Oh, and one more thing. The deal you thought you had with Vanguard Capital, it was a fake. You were colluding with them to defraud me, and they were colluding with someone else to defraud you. You were a pawn, Miss Vance, and now you're a liability. Serafina looked as if she'd been slapped. She turned and fled. Pushing through the crowd, her crimson dress a smear of color as she ran in humiliation. Elara watched them both go, her face impassive. She then turned back to the microphone and the stunned, silent audience. My apologies for the housekeeping, she said. She then smiled, a real warm smile that transformed her face. Now, shall we talk about the future of the Ashford Foundation? The crowd, after a beat of stunned silence, erupted into deafening, thunderous applause. The fallout was instantaneous. By 9:30 p.m., the Heiress in hiding was the #1 trending topic worldwide. By 10:00 p.m., stock futures for Vanguard Capital had plummeted into the red. By 11:00 p.m., Marcus Pierce was in a holding cell booked for questioning. Serafina Vance was nowhere to be found. She had reportedly gone straight to her lawyer's office, her phone turned off. But Elara was not focused on the past. She was focused on the future. After her speech, a brilliant, passionate and detailed plan to refocus the $20 billion Ashford Foundation on microloans for women-owned businesses and shelters. Her bake sale work scaled globally. She had set the financial world on fire. She spent the next 2 hours in a whirlwind of conversations, not with fawning socialites, but with global leaders, bank presidents, and philanthropic titans. "Your mother would be so proud," said an elderly duchess, a close friend of her mother's. "She always said you were the cleverest of all." "A brilliant move, Ms. Ashford," said the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. "Restructuring the foundation's debt will free up 30% more capital. I'll have my team on a call with yours tomorrow." Elara moved through the room with a grace and confidence that felt to her like slipping back into her own skin. She wasn't acting. She wasn't Elara Pierce, or even Elara Ashford. She was, for the first time, simply Elara. She found her grandfather by the reflecting pool, watching the scene, a look of profound peace on his face. "You've started a war, child," he said, his voice proud. "I've finished one, grandfather," she corrected. "What they did, it was an infection. I just removed it." "And Marcus," Elara's face hardened for a moment, "he gets exactly what he's entitled to. Our prenuptial agreement, the one he insisted on, states that in the event of a divorce, all assets are split 50-50. Julian looked confused. "But child, that means—" "It means," Elara said, "he gets 50% of his assets, which as of 9 p.m. tonight are less than zero. His stock options are worthless. His bank accounts are frozen. The house in Greenwich is in a trust under my maiden name. He gets half of his credit card debt, and I, in turn, will keep 100% of the Ashford Trust, which I never disclosed to him." Julian Ashford stared at her. You planned this. The prenup. You knew." "I hoped, grandfather. I hoped I'd married a man who loved me. But I am an Ashford. I planned for the man he truly was." Her phone, a new one, issued by Ben, buzzed. It was her lawyer. "Ms. Ashford, Marcus Pierce is requesting to see you. He's at the 19th precinct. He's rambling, saying it's all a terrible misunderstanding. He's asking for you to post his bail." Elara looked at the phone, then at her grandfather. She smiled. "Tell him," she said, "to ask his mistress." She hung up and turned back to the party. The next morning, Elara did not wake up in the Greenwich house. She was in her family's penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a place that had been kept exactly as her mother had left it. She woke at 5:00 a.m. as she always did. But instead of making coffee for an ungrateful husband, she was met by her new chief of staff. By 6:00 a.m. she was in the main Ashford Global boardroom on the 80th floor, the city lights still twinkling below her. The board was assembled the same men who had been stunned into silence last night. "Good morning, gentlemen," Elara said, taking her seat at the head of the massive obsidian table, her grandfather's seat. "I'm sure you've all read the preliminary reports from PricewaterhouseCoopers." The room was tense. They had expected a socialite. They were facing a strategist. "The Vanguard capital leak was effective," said one of the older board members, a man named Henderson. "But it's cost us. The stock is volatile." "It's not a leak, Mr. Henderson," Elara said, opening her laptop. "It's a controlled burn. We've exposed a competitor's deep-seated corruption. We took a 3% dip in pre-market trading. They've lost 60% of their value. I call that a win." She projected a file onto the main screen. This is not our problem. This is. The screen filled with a list of stagnant, underperforming assets. We have $4 billion tied up in old-world fossil fuels and speculative real estate. It's lazy. It's my grandfather's way. No offense, Julian, she said, nodding to her grandfather who was attending via a video link from the penthouse, looking happier than he had in years. None taken, child. It was lazy. As of today, Elara announced, we are divesting, all of it. We are liquidating these assets and redirecting the full $4 billion into our new Ashford Future Division, Renewable Energy Biotech and AI Ethics. We are no longer a 20th century company. We are a 21st century one. Any questions? The board was silent, stunned by the sheer scale and speed of her move. This was not a transition. It was a revolution. Henderson stammered. This will take months, years even, to untangle. It will take 6 weeks, Elara said. I've already modeled the divestment. The plan is on your tablets. I expect the first phase to be executed by Monday. She stood up. I'm not here to be a placeholder. I'm not here to be a figurehead. I'm here to work. My housewife days taught me one thing: efficiency. I ran a $5 million charity on a $50,000 budget. Imagine what I can do with $50 billion. She looked at every single person in the eyes. You are either with me or you are in my way. Decide. You have until the end of the day. She walked out of the boardroom, leaving a group of the most powerful men in New York, utterly speechless. While Elara was remaking a global empire, Marcus Pierce was sitting in a bare white interrogation room. His tuxedo was rumpled, his hair a mess. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving him a shaking, terrified wreck. I don't understand, he kept repeating to the detective. You have to call her. She's my wife, Elara Ashford. It's a mistake, Mr. Pierce, the detective said, sipping his coffee. Your wife is currently in a board meeting. Her lawyer, however, has been very helpful. The door opened, and a tired-looking public defender walked in. Mr. Pierce, I'm your court-appointed attorney. Court-appointed? Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. I'm worth millions. I don't need a public defender. Call my lawyer. Call Bill. We did, the defender said, sitting down. His firm dropped you as a client this morning, citing irreconcilable conflicts of interest. Apparently they also work for Ashford Global. Marcus's face fell. What, no? Listen, Marcus, you're in a lot of trouble. The SEC has you dead to rights on securities fraud. The Swiss have frozen your accounts. And your wife? Well, she's filed for divorce. Divorce, no, she can't. She can. And she has. She's also provided the DA with a very thorough dossier. Texts, bank records, recorded phone calls. This one's from a Serafina V. The defender read from a paper. He's just desperate enough to sign anything. And his pathetic little wife, he actually called her domestic. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. She knew. She knew everything. It appears so, the lawyer said. And Miss Vance, she's been granted immunity in exchange for her full testimony against you, and Vanguard Capital. That witch, Marcus slammed his fist on the table. She set me up. Looks like a lot of people set you up, Marcus, the lawyer said. Right now your only play is a plea bargain. With this much evidence, they're going to bury you. Marcus Pierce, the man who had dismissed his wife as just a housewife, finally understood. He had never been the player. He had never even been on the board. He was the piece, and he had just been swept off it. He put his head in his hands, the reality of his arrogance crashing down on him. He was a man with nothing. No job, no money, no mistress, and a wife who was it, turned out one of the most powerful women in the world. And she hated him. 3 months later, the headline on Forbes magazine read, "The Ashford Revolution: How Elara Ashford Added $30 billion to her empire by thinking like a housewife." The article detailed her domestic approach. She cut waste. She focused on community. The Ashford Foundation, she cleaned house, firing 40% of the redundant, overpaid C-suite executives, and she invested in the home, her $4 billion pivot to sustainable energy, which was already posting record returns. Elara herself was not in the penthouse. She was in the newly renovated wing of the Haven Women's Shelter, the one her little charity gala had been raising money for. After the ball, she had personally written a check to complete the funding, and then had the Ashford Foundation match it, building a new state-of-the-art facility. She was not wearing Dior. She was in jeans and a simple sweater, painting a wall. "You know," said Maria, the shelter director, and her friend, handing her a roller, "you're a lot more famous than the last time you were here. I had to shoo away 3 paparazzi." "They'll get bored," Elara laughed, painting a long, even stroke of pale blue. "They're waiting for me to go to a club or crash a car. They don't find philanthropic manual labor very exciting." "Well, we're glad to have you. The Elara Ashford Center for Economic Independence sounds a lot better than the new wing." "It's just a name, Maria." "It's a symbol," Maria said, stopping. "You know, for years you'd come here, so quiet, so efficient. You were the best organizer we ever had. But there was always a sadness to you. A wall. That wall is gone. You seem happy." Elara stopped painting and looked at her friend. "I am. For 10 years I tried to be someone I wasn't. I hid. I thought being just a housewife was a disguise. But I wasn't pretending. I loved this work. I loved organizing. I loved a balanced budget. I loved making something out of nothing. I was doing it on the wrong scale." She looked around the beautiful, bright room where women would soon be learning to kyat and build businesses. Marcus thought housewife was an insult. He thought it meant stupid. He didn't realize that running a home, running a charity, running a life, that's the most difficult CEO job in the world. He didn't just underestimate me, Elara Ashford. He underestimated all of us. A young associate from her office poked her head in. "Ms. Ashford, sorry to interrupt. Mr. Henderson is on the line. The final divestment is complete." Elara nodded. "Tell him I'll be there in an hour, and tell the jet to be ready. I'm flying to the new solar plant in Arizona tonight." She turned back to Maria, smiling. One last wall. 1 year later. Julian Ashford sat on the porch at Griffin's Ledge, watching the sunset paint the lake in gold and purple. He was weaker, but he was still here. He had held on. He heard footsteps and smiled as Elara sat beside him, wrapping a blanket over his legs. "You made it," he whispered. "I told you I'd be here for the weekend," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "The board can survive without me for 48 hours. "How is everything?" "Marcus Pierce," she said, her voice neutral, was sentenced to 8 years for fraud. He'll be out in 4 with good behavior. "And Ms. Vance? She's working as a consultant in Dubai. She'll never work in the US or Europe again. She's irrelevant. Good. He sighed, a sound of contentment. And the company? We just broke ground on the first fully carbon-neutral shipping fleet. The Ashford Foundation is now a global leader in women's economic empowerment. And I finally sold the Greenwich House. I gave the proceeds to the Haven shelter. You did good, child. You did what I never could. You gave the name a soul. They sat in silence watching the stars appear. Elara was no longer a housewife, not really. She was a CEO, a philanthropist, a global power. But she still, on quiet weekends, baked her grandfather's favorite bread. She still balanced her own checkbook. She had not shed her housewife skin. She had simply shown the world that the skills of a housewife scaled up were the skills that could run the world. She had been called just a housewife as an insult, but she had turned it into a title of power, resilience, and quiet, unassailable strength. The woman who had been dismissed was now the woman who could not be ignored, and she was finally exactly where she was supposed to be. Thank you for listening to this story of karma revenge and the power of a woman who was dangerously underestimated. We've all felt invisible at times, dismissed by people who are too arrogant to see our true worth. Elara's story is a reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. They're not just listening, they're planning. What did you think of Marcus's ultimate downfall? Was it an ending you saw coming? Let me know your favorite twist in the comments below. If you love stories where the underdog gets their ultimate revenge, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a good story, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. You won't want to miss the drama we have coming up next. Thanks for watching.